Kia ora and welcome to the Niggly, a Wiggly, a Jiggly, a Niche Cast. I am the Diggity Doodah Doc, and I am joined by I can't say Wiggly after saying Wiggly for the Niche Cast and then say Wiggly Wildcard, so I have to come up with a
Wobbly?
different or better Wobbly Wildcard. Wobbly Wildcard is equally as weird. The Wobbly Wildcard and the Diggity Doodah Doc, talking our way through various Kiwi sporting topics, and today we have a focus, a microscope on the Blackcaps' first test victory. What an amazing result it was versus Bangladesh. An invigorating test match in which both teams fought tooth and nail until the bitter end, and they competed so tough, and it was edge of the seat viewing. Can you tell, Wildcard, that I've been deeply enthralled in some Game of Thrones content, and I just wanted to kind of portray that into some Blackcaps shenanigans. Just a heads up, tomorrow or the next few days there will be a Warriors Niche Cast episode coming out as well, previewing the Warriors 2019 season. So if that's your buzz, and cricket's not your buzz, don't worry, we cover all sports. Not all sports, but we cover a wide range of sports here at the Niche Cast and the Niche Cache, and we will be coming at you with some Warriors content in the coming days. Wildcard, we will get into some Blackcaps versus Bangladesh first test debrief thoughts. But I have been listening to some Game of Thrones podcasts, and I've been listening to a specific one that's kind of been wrapping up the Dunk and Egg stories from George R.R. Martin that I think take place a while prior to the A Song of Ice and Fire books. And it's been interesting kind of because they break it down, the story, and also George R.R. Martin's kind of thoughts and ideas that he portrays in these stories, and how he wrote different books and different series intertwined with each other. So could you just explain Dunk and Egg to the listener, and any thoughts corresponding from Dunk and Egg into the Game of Thrones world? Do you know of Dunk and Egg, first and foremost, is probably the best question.
I know of it.
And hello.
Yeah, and also hello. I know of it. I haven't read it. I don't know a whole lot about the actual subject matter of the books. Other than that, it's sort of like more of a, what would you call it? Like a fairy tale type structure to it, eh? Like it's not as deep, fantasy as the old Song of Ice and Fire collection. That's about it for my knowledge of the Dunk and Eggs, though. Other than that, it's just a bit of a prequel thing, which I understand many have subjected it to the idea that perhaps it has something to do with the later stuff in terms of Easter eggs and Dunk and Eggs and I don't know, Dippy eggs, crow's eggs.
Yeah, eggs galore, scrambled. I won't take any credit for this because I'm just listening to the person break it down, but they suggest that there are numerous ideas and kind of writing things. I'm having a blank here as a writer myself. I'm having a blank as to what it is. Like tactics and techniques George R. R. Martin uses that are highly prevalent in Dunk and Egg stories and the Song of Ice and Fire stories as well. And stuff like this Dunk character fighting someone in a river and drowning the other person, and then Brienne of Tarth, who is a direct relative of Dunk, fighting Jaime Lannister in a river, or how they set up the different inns like pubs and those old school pub motel thingies, and how they are portrayed in like the exact same way throughout all the stories, and how that's repetition and stuff like that. So that's kind of the idea that I found the most interesting, is how a lot of the seeds to use a different word to eggs, a lot of the seeds and
well done.
techniques and tactics are very similar throughout the two stories, but it is a different story. It's a prequel to what we see in A Song of Ice and Fire.
How much of a prequel is it? Because I remember now, as you said, Dunk was a character. I remember that Egg is a character, and I remember why they're called that. Because Egg is Aegon, isn't it? As in Aegon Targaryen. And is that the same Aegon Targaryen that was the real old fella who, the maester from the Wall, or is that a distant ancestor of his?
I believe that is...
No, that was Aemon, eh? But he said Egg when he died. He said something like that, like it was a hint. It's all coming back to me slowly in pieces.
He's either the brother or he is Egg, because in the Duncan Egg story...
It's his brother, I'm pretty sure.
Because in the Duncan Egg story, Egg is like 10 years old.
Right.
He's a wee chap, so it would make sense for him to be extremely old in the current storyline, Song of Ice and Fire storyline. So
yeah, because do you remember when Aemon Targaryen died? And I can't remember if this was from the book or if it was from the show, but I think it was from the show, because the book doesn't give things away as often as the show does, now that the show is sort of like rounding that bend. And he died, and he was sort of like sitting there with Sam on the boat as they were traveling. Yeah, this is definitely the show, because he died somewhere else in the book. And he started like muttering about Egg to himself. And old mate didn't know what he was talking about. Something like that.
For some reason, I think he was Egg.
Nudge. Maybe he was. Maybe it was I don't know.
But yeah, definitely unconfirmed. And the interesting idea that I found was like there's this Blood Raven character who is Brendan Rivers, who I believe is now or was the third-eyed Raven that we met in the TV show. But he is like a king for a period of time in this Duncan Egg storyline. And first of all, he's an archer, so he's got all these mad tactics on how to kill people. Like, he shot at this one dude's son, so then this one dude would automatically run over to help him, and then he sniped the other guy as well. And like, he's an amazing archer with all these, like, he's got a little gang of archers. But then he also has this reputation as being a magical sorcerer with eyes all over Westeros. And like, it's kind of unfounded. That's the idea I got from this, was that his reputation had preceded him. But then when you think about what we know about the third-eyed Raven later on, it kind of makes sense that this guy had a reputation as being a mad sorcerer, and that's why everyone didn't really like him as king, because he had this weird reputation as being a bit of a Looney Tune. But then he goes on to become the third-eyed Raven as well.
Bit of prophecy, perhaps, in the books there. I've always liked how Martin sort of like weaves his stories in together like that. He's always got that bigger picture thing, and he's dropping hints at the start, knowing how, like, ideas that he wants to bring together later on, like in 300,000 words time, and he manages to do something like that by doing things. It's sneaky old work, isn't it? It's sneaky old work, wrapping all these loose ends together, or these apparent loose ends that become important later on, and there's little red herrings otherwhere, and it's dense. It's very dense.
And I would also say that the Targaryen family line is just absolutely fucked up. Like,
yes,
the Targaryens are the most just ludicrous people of a ludicrous story, which is saying something. Wildcard, you may have guessed that I'm kind of stalling here.
Are you?
I'm putting off talking about the Blackcaps versus Bangladesh test a wee bit. It's, for me, this test is encapsulated by the kind of boring aspect of this first test being exactly, with natural variance, exactly how test cricket has gone in Aotearoa for the bulk of like the last 5 years. We get these touring teams. Every so often you get South Africa. Every so often you get England. Every so often you get a beastly team who is at the top of their game, who can deal with the challenge that is the Blackcaps in Aotearoa. But most of the time you get Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, West Indies, and whoever else. And these tests just play out like this, where the Blackcaps batsmen are fantabulous in Aotearoa. Much power to them. They can all score plenty of runs in Aotearoa. That's beautiful. And then our bowlers, the seam bowlers, if it's not swinging, they bowl short, and they take 20 wickets every test. That leads into like the idea that the spinner doesn't really play a role in the test, because it doesn't even get to that point. Like, it starts with swing bowling. Okay, it's not really swinging, so then we go to the short stuff, or the swing bowling. Those two steps always do the trick in Aotearoa against touring teams. Not always, but I'm talking like majority of the time here. And we don't even get to the spinner step. So the only interesting aspect of this Blackcaps test team right now is the spinner department. And like, much love to Jet Raval, first test century. Tom Latham, like his like 4th 150 plus score, whatever crazy numbers he's rolling out. Kane Williamson, double hundy. Awesome, fantastic, beautiful. Henry Nicholls, 50. Colin de Grandhomme just coming out and spanking it everywhere. Trent Bolt, 5 wickets. Neil Wagner, 5 wickets. Awesome, we've seen it all before in Aotearoa. Tell me when they do that overseas. The only interesting thing is the spinner bowler. But we cannot say anything interesting about the spinner bowler in the Blackcaps test team in Aotearoa, because we don't even get to that point. And that's not a bad thing, it's not a good thing. It's just where I sit in talking about the Blackcaps, because there's just nothing really to say.
Yeah, a little bit of the usual picture there. The funny thing with that is, there's lots, as you said, there's lots of many little wrinkles that went on, but nothing that's really like changing the trajectory of what the team's doing. But the funny thing with that is that when they did do it overseas relatively recently in the UAE, who was getting the bulk of those wickets, who was getting the glory as the bowlers there, was sold Ajaz Patel and Will Somerville, who no longer in the test team, no longer seem to be in immediate contention as long as they're rotating fellas in and out with the role. Todd Astle, I believe, picked because, well, this is my theory anyway, I think he was picked ahead of Ajaz Patel because they wanted a little bit of extra strength in the batting lineup, while the Blackcaps went and scored their biggest ever test score and Todd Astle didn't bat. So not sure that was really a necessary priority for the team there. He did get through a few overs in the second innings, but he didn't look fantastic. I'll ask you this, Doc. Who was the last New Zealand spinner to get a wicket in Aotearoa in a test match?
I'm going to say Ish Sodhi.
You'd be wrong. It's Todd Astle.
Oh, Ish Sodhi didn't get any wickets in that Christchurch?
Nah, he just saved his heroics for the batting in the second innings that time. Todd Astle last wicket against England at Eden Park in the day-nighter test. That was the last time a New Zealand spinner got a wicket in a test match in New Zealand, and since then, old mate Francis Payne came up with a great stat from this. Apparently it's been, I think it was 71 consecutive wickets from seam bowlers since then, which is just borderline insane. I don't think there's another country in the world that could have that. Maybe England, but they do pick spinning all-rounders there, so maybe not. But that's a little bit crazy, I think.
I did hear that stat thrown up a few times. Oh, excuse me. But with this idea that it reflects poorly on the spinner.
Yeah. See, there's the point to argue, eh?
Which is so crazy because, as I alluded to before, it doesn't even get to the point of the spinner needing to take wickets.
Or needing to bat on this occasion.
Yeah, so how can that be a negative? It is like saying that number 6 or 7 batsman, Colin de Grandhomme, for example, averages 15 in Test cricket. This is a hypothetical. He averages 15 in Test cricket, but he's only batted, in 4 innings of 20 tests. That doesn't reflect poorly on his batting, because the guys who are in the team to do the batting job ahead of him do their job to such an extent that there's no opportunity for Colin de Grandhomme to shine with his batting, or whoever else. Number 7, Mitchell Santner. Henry Nicholls, batting number 5. Like, whoever it is in that middle order, if the top order are doing their job to such a good extent that it doesn't present opportunities for the middle order batsman, it doesn't reflect poorly on the middle order batsman. Which is what we have with the spinner in Aotearoa, because, neither of us think that Todd Astle is the best test spinner in the Blackcaps. But we cannot say, we can say, he didn't look too flash in that spell, decent spell, but we cannot say that he shouldn't be in this team based on his performances, because his lack of wickets have come from very limited opportunities, and he doesn't need to take wickets. There is no requirement for Todd Astle to take wickets when the seam bowlers are taking 20 wickets every time. So it's just this weird position where we can't really come to any conclusions about the spinner.
Yeah, Astle did have that one spell where was it Sumia and Mamadullah were on their big 200 run partnership, and he was the one opportunity he's had in a long time to come in and just bowl a few overs, hold up an end in Test cricket, and there were a couple good balls in there, a couple that got tonked over his head for 6. He didn't get a wicket. Eventually someone else did. As is always the case with the Blackcaps, you just bring in Neil Wagner after a while and he'll break up any partnership. And that's kind of the way it went. The interesting flip side of this is that if you look at, which I know you will have already done, if you look at the Plunket Shield stats from the last week, Ajaz Patel, Will Somerville, and Ish Sodhi all got through massive bulks of overs in their games. Not so much Mitch Santner, who didn't have so many overs to go around because Sodhi was bowling so many. But there's those 3 guys who are all competing for that position with Todd Astle, who's in the Test team, not getting a lot of overs. They're bowling a whole heap of overs in domestic cricket, but you just know if one of them went in next, it's not Todd Astle's fault he's not bowling the overs, it's just the way that the match went, and it's the way that matches tend to go when we play in New Zealand. We almost don't need a spinner at all, do we? Why not just pick an extra batter and chuck him at 7? I don't know. Kane Williamson can be the backup spinner. Yeah, who, if one of those other 3 had gone in, they would have been in the same situation, and then Astle would have been bowling 40, 50, 60 overs for Canterbury instead. It's just, it seems to be the pattern.
Yeah, I've got 2 ideas to kind of wrap it all up. And you alluded to the Plunket Shield there. So I think Ish Sodhi took 6 wickets in an innings, Will Somerville took 4 in an innings. And
it was something like that, yeah.
Clearly it was a pitch up in Whangarei that took a bit of spin, I believe, as the Whangarei local. What do you reckon?
I was at a little bit of this game. I saw a bit of the first and second days, and I don't know so much that I would say it was spinning. I would just say it wasn't doing anything. That's the word I had from those that would know, is that it was just dead. Although it did start reversing a little bit on the late in the first day, so maybe there was some funk there. I think just there was quality batting going on.
And it's also up in the
pumped everyone.
It's also up in the naughty north, where there's plenty of sunshine, dry conditions, a bit dusty.
Oh yeah, big old fire ban.
Yeah, so that lends itself to a more spin and reverse swing. So you got conditions where the spinners are probably going to be more effective, and they were more effective.
Accurate, yeah.
Which, again, it's different pitch, different scenario, different conditions, whole different kettle of fish. So we can't... All that is to say that we're still no clearer on who the best spinner is in Aotearoa, which is a crazy idea. And then to wrap up the whole Blackcaps spinner situation, you said maybe select another batsman. I've also heard ideas. Matt Henry took 5 wickets and 4 wickets, I believe.
He took 9 wickets in the match.
9 wickets for the match. So... lovely, fantastic for Matt Henry. So maybe Matt Henry should come in ahead of the spinner.
Yeah, interesting one. Because I was thinking that when we were talking about the spinner, I was thinking, well, the guy who took all the wickets in the Plunket Shield this week was actually Matt Henry, and no one's really thinking of him as an option because our the Blackcaps seam bowlers are doing so well. Trent Bolt is just absolute world class. Neil Wagner has long since established himself as the dude that comes in and gets wickets without fail every single time. Brief asterisk for that UAE series. And Tim Southey, in test matches at least, is bowling some of the best stuff of his career over the last year or so. So, I mean, where do you get Matt Henry in? Maybe that's the option. Pick 4 seamers. I'm not sure if the Blackcaps would think that far out of the box, though. I'm not sure that's really in their mission operative these days.
Well, that's you kind of jumped the gun a bit there, because I brought up Matt Henry to say that if my spinner in Aotearoa is not going to bowl a whole lot, I would play a spinner. Well, I would play the spinner with the most upside, the most potential to be a genuine Test international spinner, X-Factor, job-doing player, just to have them gain international experience for the benefit of when they are called upon to take wickets. Whether that is Ish Sodhi, whether it's Mitchell Santner. I could go long into the list of young spinners who you could identify as being future gun spinners at the test level. Based on the workload and effectiveness and the influence of what we have seen recently, 71 consecutive test wickets to seam bowlers. Based on that, doesn't it feel and seem more effective to play a younger spinner? Now, we're in a situation where Todd Astle, Ajaz Patel, Will Somerville are all of the older variety. Thus, they are more in tune with their game. Thus, I believe they are just better spinners, perhaps, than Mitchell Santner and Ish Sodhi, because they have greater experience. They've seen different situations. They're just more well-rounded. But if we're not going to bowl Ajaz Patel or Todd Astle too much in test because we don't need to, why not just have Mitchell Santner, Ish Sodhi, any other young spinner in Aotearoa? Why not just have them in the test team to have them in the test team? Hey, you can bowl a couple of overs before lunch just to roll your arm over. You can be around the boys. You can learn what it's like to consistently play test cricket. Because what's going to happen, Todd Astle will play out the rest of the series, and I doubt we'll see Todd Astle play another test. If we do, it'll be because Will Somerville or Ajaz Patel, Ish Sodhi or Mitchell Santner played the next test series and then didn't play another test series for a while. And we're just going to have this constant rotation of spinners at the Blackcaps level. Based on what we know about test cricket in New Zealand, let's have a bit of planning. Let's have a bit of development. Give someone the opportunity with the most potential, the most upside. Give them the opportunity to learn about bowling spin at the test level, because what we've had in recent times is so much chopping and changing that these guys don't get better at bowling at the test match level. For Mitchell Santner or Ish Sodhi, who are the number one spinners with the most upside in Aotearoa right now, they need to be playing consistent test cricket if we want them to get better. That's my drop the mic type of finishing statement there, Wildcard.
I would suggest that they've sort of already done that with Mitch Santner if you take a peek at his test bowling average. He was in there for a while without necessarily hammering home a position on the basis of his stats, of his performances. But now he seems to be put back into that old into the rotation, and I'm not sure about I'm not really sure how helpful that is for anyone. I will say that I'll be disappointed if Todd Astle doesn't play the last two tests, because once you pick a guy, you just gotta stick with them, and for this exact reason that we've just been talking about, like you're gonna get sparse opportunities even when you do play as a spinner in New Zealand. You can't just be like making snap judgments based on what was a real minimal whatever you call it, impact on the game that he had. I'm not sure what these ICC test rankings and whatever are up to, but apparently New Zealand's quite high on the list, and I don't know if it's like the FIFA rankings, in which case the FIFA rankings are just the absolute most like overrated, non-representative, like absolute pile of bollocks that you could possibly imagine, and they get absolutely churned out by people like New Zealand football when they say New Zealand's at a high old New Zealand's jumped 20 places in the latest. Well, that doesn't actually happen. That's hypothetical, because you got to play matches in order to jump positions. But they do definitely love pointing out that the football ferns are top 20, and I'm not sure how much that really matters when you look at the growth of other countries in comparison to the growth of New Zealand, which is getting up there, but I don't know. We'll see if they can win a game at the World Cup. I'm pretty pumped, actually. I'm pretty excited for that whole journey. Maybe we'll have to do a podcast about them at some point. But the interesting factor that I'm swinging back around to here is that Kane Williamson apparently scores some runs in the next couple tests, and he'll go ahead of Virat Kohli for number one ICC ranked test batsman. And I don't know that actually matters. I don't think that actually reflects anything, because I assume that the rankings, like most of these other rankings, are pretty silly and pretty fatuous, pretty irrelevant. But it would be nice to see Kane Williamson at the top, and it would be nice to see some of the old Kohli stands going wild at that. I think would be an interesting afternoon's entertainment, scrolling through some Twitter feeds.
Yeah, no shit's given about that. Like, come to your own conclusions about who the best batsman is in the world. You don't need rankings to tell you who's your favourite batsman, who's the best in the world. Just come to your own conclusions.
I'd like to know how they figure them out, like what judgments are taken into account and what isn't, because I can only assume that they're completely just like bland and boring, and obviously this is the problem with the FIFA rankings, is they favour teams that play more often, and New Zealand obviously plays less tests, and a country like New Zealand in football doesn't play as often as those European countries that are constantly going through some kind of qualification group stage thing, and hence those ones are ranked a lot higher. And I assume Virat Kohli is I don't assume, I know that Virat Kohli is the best batsman on the planet without doubt. I would like to confidently assert Kane Williamson as number 2 on that list, which I think is where he belongs, but hey, if he can nudge up in the top, fair enough. But I can't wait to see people overreact to that, I'll say that much, because they overreacted to the team rankings the other week, because there's no way New Zealand are in the top couple in test matches. Just no way.
Hey, they're the best test team in Aotearoa.
That's true. That's true, but when was the last time Australia or India or England or South Africa? Well, England came here last year and we drew away, so that's not so bad. I think South Africa beat us the year before, though. Well.
Wildcard,
We beat Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka beats South Africa. There we go.
The last question. How many overs will Todd Astle bowl in the second test?
I can't remember where they're playing, though. I guess it doesn't matter, because Hamilton is supposed to be the one that spins the most, at least by recent reputation, and he only bowled 20 overs. So I'm going to say, I don't know. I think Bangladesh might be able to stick around for one decent innings, because they've got a lot of batsmen who are getting... the problem is they've got a lot of batsmen. Both of those innings, they had one or two guys that scored big hundreds, and everyone else was getting out in single figures. So I don't know. I think there's potential for them to have a decent innings and put a little bit of pressure on. I just don't know that Todd Astle's going to be the guy who gets the bulk of the overs there. So I'm going to say, I'm going to be generous and say a little bit more. We'll go 25. I don't think he exceeds 25 is what I'll say.
I reckon he'll get up around 30, and we're in the last two tests we're going to learn a lot more about Todd Astle.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Blackcaps actually show a little bit of fatigue over the next two games. Not physical fatigue, but mental fatigue. Because they've had some relatively, they had a really tough test series against, over in the UAE. Then they came over here and had a pretty simple one against Sri Lanka, but then just when you thought they were cruising to a victory in at the Basin, and then Angelo Matthews batted for ages, and then it rained on the final day. And you saw a glimpse of a team that sort of let one get away. They just weren't ruthless enough in terms of killing the test off when they had the chance, or perhaps didn't have the weapons when the ball wasn't swinging. That's another alternative. And then, played a whole bunch of ODI cricket, really shifted the focus towards the World Cup, and now we've suddenly just jumped back into 3 tests against Bangladesh. Absolutely, caned them with the bat in the first innings, pun intended, and the seamers, the expected fellas got the wickets. I just wouldn't be surprised if they drop their standards a little bit, over the next 2 tests. Maybe not in the second one, but in the third one, certainly when the series is wrapped up, and maybe they decide to rest someone like Bolt or Wagner, and I can see that possibility. I'm not sure this Blackcaps team has got the ruthless edge that some other top test teams have at the moment, or that some other top test teams are lacking as well at the moment.
The ruthless edge that a lot of Kiwis and the Kiwi mainstream media think the Blackcaps have.
There's just so much recency bias with the Blackcaps, eh? They'll go overseas, they'll lose, and everyone will be talking about, this guy's got to be dropped, that guy's got to be dropped, what is this team doing, underperforming? They come back home, smash someone sweep someone in the series, couple guys get massive hundreds, couple guys get 5-10 wicket bags, and all of a sudden, the Blackcaps, they're just so great, they're just doing the job every time, and it's just take a step back, look at the patterns. We win at home and we lose away, like most teams do in test cricket. The real test is winning games in the opposition opposition environments, when you're really up against it, when they're in their favourable conditions. That's when you got to get them.
Best test team in Aotearoa wildcard.
That's the one.
Rightio. We will be back in the coming days talking all things Warriors, and until then we've got Todd Astle to bowl. I'm going to take responsibility here. I'm going to say we've got Todd Astle to bowl 30 overs. We've got the Blackcaps to start to fatigue and maybe drop their standards a wee bit. That's the 2 things to watch out for in the second test. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Just stay glowing. Find your glow and keep glowing. Farewell.